Every man faces this moment, the text that doesn't come, the silence that cuts deeper than any argument, the realization that she's gone, and you're left holding the pieces of something you thought was unbreakable. But what if I told you that this pain could become your greatest weapon? Most men beg, they plead, they chase. But there's another way, a way that transforms rejection into respect and weakness into strength. And stay till the end, I'll reveal a ruthless strategy from Machiavelli that transforms rejection into respect and weakness into strength. This isn't about getting her back. This is about getting yourself back. Don't skip this. There's a truth at the end that most men miss even after reading The Prince for years. Machiavelli understood something about human nature that goes far beyond politics. He knew that the moment you show weakness, you've already lost the game. And when a woman leaves you, you're not just dealing with heartbreak, you're dealing with power. In 1513, Niccolò Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." But here's what most people miss about this famous quote. Machiavelli wasn't just talking about ruling kingdoms. He was revealing a fundamental truth about all human relationships, including romantic ones. When a woman leaves you, she's essentially saying, "I don't fear losing you." She's comfortable with the idea of life without you. She's not worried about your absence. She's not concerned about what you might do next. You've become predictable, safe, and ultimately powerless. Machiavelli understood that respect and attraction are born from uncertainty, not from comfort. When you're always available, always responsive, always there, you become what he called contemptible. Not because you're a bad person, but because you're a predictable one. Have you experienced this in your own life? That moment when someone becomes so comfortable with your presence that they start taking it for granted? The Prince teaches us that power comes from being unpredictable. When she knows exactly how you'll react, when she can count on your desperation, when she's certain you'll always be there waiting, she holds all the cards. But the moment you become unpredictable, the moment she can't anticipate your next move, the power dynamic shifts. Here's where Machiavelli's genius becomes practical. In The Prince, he writes, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. When you chase after someone who left you, you appear desperate. When you beg for another chance, you appear weak. When you constantly text and call, you appear needy. But what happens when you completely disappear?" Machiavelli called this strategic withdrawal. Not the retreat of a defeated man, but the calculated move of someone who understands power dynamics. When she expects you to chase, you vanish. When she expects you to fight for her, you accept her decision with dignity. When she expects drama, you give her silence. This isn't about playing games. This is about understanding that people only value what they might lose. As long as you're chasing her, as long as you're available, as long as you're fighting for her attention, she knows she hasn't really lost you. You're still there, still accessible, still under her control. But the moment you withdraw completely, the moment you become unavailable and unreachable, something shifts in her psychology. Suddenly, she's not the one being pursued, she's the one who lost something valuable. Tap like if this challenges everything you thought about heartbreak. Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel." She can see your absence, she can see that you're no longer in her life, she can see that you've moved on, but she can't feel your pain anymore. She can't feel your desperation. She can only feel the void where you used to be. Here's the deepest part of Machiavelli's strategy, and this is where most men fail to understand the psychology behind it. When you become indifferent to someone's presence in your life, when you genuinely stop caring whether they stay or go, you become powerful. Machiavelli observed that the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. When she left you, she set a trap, the trap of making you believe you need her back to be happy. Most men fall into this trap and become the prey. But when you become indifferent, when you focus on your own life, your own goals, your own happiness, you become the lion. You become someone who cannot be trapped by another person's approval or rejection. This indifference isn't fake. It's not an act you put on hoping she'll come back. It's a genuine transformation where you realize that your happiness, your self-worth, your entire life doesn't depend on one person's decision to stay or leave. Would you call this wisdom or cold manipulation? Machiavelli would say, it doesn't matter what you call it, what matters is that it works. Because while you're building yourself, while you're focused on your own growth and power, she's watching, and what she sees is not the broken man who begged for her to stay. What she sees is the man who was strong enough to let her go. The irony is beautiful. By not needing her, you become worthy of her. By not chasing her, you become worth chasing. By not fighting for her attention, you become worthy of attention. This is the paradox of power that Machiavelli understood centuries ago. Leave your view in the comments. I want to hear from you. But here's the most important part. This strategy isn't about getting her back. It's about getting yourself back. It's about reclaiming the power you gave away when you made someone else's opinion of you more important than your own opinion of yourself. Let me share something that will change how you see this entire situation. Throughout history, the most powerful men understood this principle instinctively. When Caesar's wife Pompeia was suspected of infidelity, he didn't beg her to explain. He didn't fight for the relationship. He simply said, Caesar's wife must be above suspicion, and divorced her immediately. Not because he was certain of her guilt, but because he understood that his reputation and power were more valuable than any single relationship. Machiavelli studied these historical patterns obsessively. He noticed that men who chased after those who rejected them invariably lost not just the person, but their dignity, their reputation, and their future opportunities. Meanwhile, men who responded to rejection with strategic withdrawal often found that the very people who rejected them came crawling back. But by then, these men had moved on to something better. Think about every powerful man you know personally or have read about. When faced with romantic rejection, did they spend months texting and calling? Did they show up at her workplace with flowers? Did they write long letters explaining their feelings? Of course not. They understood what Machiavelli called the economy of attention, that attention given to someone who doesn't value it is attention wasted. Here's what modern psychology confirms about Machiavelli's observations. When you chase someone who has rejected you, you're actually training them to see you as low value. Every text, every call, every attempt to win them back is evidence that you believe they are more valuable than you are. And if you believe it, they will believe it too. Machiavelli wrote extensively about what he called the mirror principle, that people see you exactly as you see yourself. When you see yourself as someone who needs to fight for scraps of attention from someone who discarded you, that's exactly how they will see you too. But when you see yourself as someone too valuable to waste time on people who don't recognize your worth, the world mirrors that perception back to you. Modern neuroscience has proven what Machiavelli intuited 500 years ago about human attraction and respect. When someone becomes too available, too predictable, too eager, it triggers what psychologists call psychological reactance. The brain literally becomes less interested in things that are easily obtainable. So here's the fascinating part. When you withdraw strategically, when you become unavailable and mysterious, you trigger what neuroscientists call the reward prediction error in her brain. Her brain was expecting you to chase, to be available, to be predictable. When you don't behave as expected, her brain releases dopamine, the same chemical associated with addiction and obsession. Machiavelli observed this without modern brain scans or psychological studies. He simply watched human behavior and noticed that people become obsessed with what they cannot have, cannot predict, cannot control. He called it the hunger of uncertainty. The human tendency to want most desperately what seems just out of reach. But here's where most men make a critical error. They think this is about manipulation, about playing games to get her back. Machiavelli's strategy isn't about getting anyone back. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't need anyone back. It's about genuine transformation, not performance. When you truly understand your own value, when you genuinely believe that your time and attention are precious commodities that should only be given to people who appreciate them, your behavior changes naturally. You don't have to pretend to be indifferent. You actually become indifferent to the opinions and choices of people who don't see your worth. This is what Machiavelli meant when he wrote about authentic power versus performed power. Performed power is an act, it's exhausting and ultimately unconvincing. Authentic power comes from genuinely knowing your worth and refusing to accept less than you deserve. When you operate from authentic power, people sense it immediately. Here's the moment of truth that Machiavelli understood but most men refuse to accept. When she walks away, she's not rejecting you, she's revealing herself. She's showing you that she was never capable of recognizing your worth when you are vulnerable. And a woman who cannot see your value when you're human, who abandons you when you need her most, that woman was never worthy of your devotion. This is the brutal awakening that separates boys from men. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince to win back those who betrayed him. He wrote it to ensure no one would ever have the power to discard him again. When you chase her, you're not fighting for love. You're fighting to remain a victim. This is the painful truth Machiavelli buried beneath all his words, that respect is not given to those who need it most, but to those who demand it least. That power belongs to those who can walk away, not to those who desperately cling. If that idea struck you, don't just scroll, like this video, subscribe for more truths that others are too afraid to say. And tell me in the comments, do you agree or is this too much? So here it is, the ruthless strategy I promised you from Machiavelli that transforms rejection into respect. It's called the prince's silence. When she leaves, you don't fight it. You don't explain yourself, you disappear completely, not in defeat but in dignity. You block her number, you remove her from your social media, you make yourself unreachable, not because you're hurt, but because you're done. You treat her departure as information to be processed. And here's the key, you never break this silence first. This strategy works because it forces her to confront the reality of her choice. When you chase, you validate her decision. When you beg, you confirm she made the right choice. But when you disappear, when you become a ghost in her life, when she realizes her rejection didn't break you but freed you, that's when doubt creeps in. That's when she realizes the man she thought she could discard has vanished forever. And in that realization, you reclaim not just your power, but your self-respect. What did this video awaken in you? Do you agree that silence is more powerful than words? That walking away requires more strength than staying? Let me know in the comments. Your opinion makes this channel a real conversation. And if this left a mark on your mind, subscribe. There's more coming, and it only gets deeper from here. We're diving into the darkest corners of human psychology, the uncomfortable truths that shaped empires and destroyed kingdoms,